Welcome back to The Lost Tactician, where the forgotten wisdom of ancient warriors and craftsmen reveals truths that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Today, we're venturing into a mystery that has puzzled archaeologists and material scientists for generations. Modern wood cracks, splinters, and rots within decades, yet Iron Age artifacts tell a radically different story. Wood that has endured millennia, harder and more resilient than anything we produce today. You know, it's kind of astonishing when you think about it. Modern wood deteriorates quickly, while well-preserved Iron Age wooden artifacts have somehow managed to withstand the test of time. The answer isn't found in heat treatments, chemical baths, or industrial pressure systems. Instead, it lies in a surprisingly elegant cold process, one that requires nothing more than patience, mineral-rich environments, and an understanding of wood chemistry that our ancestors possessed, but we've somehow forgotten. So prepare to witness how ordinary timber becomes something truly extraordinary. When archaeologists extract wooden artifacts from Iron Age settlements, particularly those preserved in wetland sites across northern Europe, they encounter a paradox that challenges everything we think we know about material degradation. These wooden tool handles, structural posts, and weapon components display a density and structural integrity that honestly defies logic. Modern hardwoods, even when treated with industrial preservatives, begin deteriorating within 50 to 70 years. Yet, here we find oak and chestnut specimens from 2,000 years ago that resist our sharpest tools, their cellular structure so thoroughly transformed that they more closely resemble stone than organic matter. The secret isn't in some lost technology requiring advanced metallurgy or complex chemical knowledge. Instead, Iron Age artisans understood something fundamental about wood's molecular composition and how to manipulate it through cold environmental processes, techniques so simple and so patient that our speed-obsessed civilization overlooked them entirely in favor of heat and chemical shortcuts that ultimately produce inferior results. The Archaeological Record reveals clues scattered across bog sites from Ireland to Scandinavia where wooden artifacts emerge blackened, dense, and virtually imperishable. Historical texts from later periods hint at deliberate aging processes, references to seasoned in earth or hardened in the black waters that initially seem metaphorical but prove to be precise technical descriptions. The breakthrough came from analyzing the cellular composition of these ancient specimens under microscopy, revealing something remarkable. Their wood cells weren't simply preserved, but fundamentally altered, packed with mineral compounds that modern wood lacks entirely. Iron hydroxide deposits, tannin iron complexes, and silicate infiltrations filled the porous structures that normally allow decay and moisture penetration. The Iron Age craftsmen didn't have laboratories, but they had keen observation and generational knowledge. They recognized that certain environments, acidic bogs, mineral-rich clay deposits, and specific waterlogged conditions transformed wood over time. To replicate this, we must first understand what they had ready access to. Oak and chestnut with naturally high tannin content, acidic water from peat bogs, clay soils rich in iron compounds, and most importantly, time measured in seasons rather than hours. The preparation begins with creating what we might call ancient elixirs, solutions that mirror the chemical conditions of these transformative environments. One crucial formula involves iron acetate solutions created by submerging rusty iron scraps in fermented organic acids derived from bark, creating a reactive compound that ancient metalworkers would have generated naturally through their forging operations and waste byproducts. The genius of cold hardening lies in its patient manipulation of wood's cellular chemistry without the destructive effects of heat. When wood undergoes traditional heat treatment, the lignin and cellulose structures break down, partially creating temporary hardness that eventually leads to brittleness and accelerated aging. Cold methods work entirely differently, operating at temperatures between 4 and 15 degrees Celsius. The ambient conditions of northern European bog environments and underground clay pits. At these low temperatures, mineral solutions penetrate deeply into the wood's capillary structure through osmotic pressure and prolonged exposure rather than forced injection. The process we're replicating involves submerging carefully selected oak samples in an iron acetate solution maintained at 8 degrees Celsius, mimicking the conditions of a waterlogged, iron-rich environment. Over weeks, the solution's iron compounds react with the wood's natural tannins, creating iron tannate, a black, incredibly dense compound that fills the cellular voids. Simultaneously, we're testing samples buried in specific clay soil compositions, where naturally occurring bog iron and acidic conditions create similar mineralization effects through direct contact rather than immersion. The transformations occurring are subtle initially, a gradual darkening, a slight increase in weight, but the cellular changes are profound. The wood's hygroscopic nature, its tendency to absorb moisture, diminishes dramatically as mineral compounds displace water and air, creating a barrier against the biological processes that cause rot. After 3 months of cold treatment, the comparison results speak to the extraordinary knowledge of Iron Age craftsmen. Untreated oak samples, when subjected to impact testing with a standard splitting maul, shatter along grain lines with predictable fracture patterns. The wood fails catastrophically under concentrated force. The cold-hardened specimens tell a completely different story. The maul rebounds, leaving only superficial surface damage. Bending tests reveal similar dramatic improvements. Untreated samples fail at approximately 35 degrees of flexion, splintering violently. Cold-hardened samples bend past 50 degrees before showing structural stress, and even then they don't splinter, but compress and deform more like dense plastics than traditional timber. The most remarkable test involves long-term moisture exposure. Untreated oak, when cycled between wet and dry conditions, begins showing surface checking and internal splitting within 6 weeks. The cold-hardened samples, even after 6 months of identical abuse, display virtually no moisture penetration or dimensional change. The mineral compounds filling their cellular structure have created a hydrophobic barrier that renders the wood essentially immune to the wet-dry cycling that destroys conventional timber. The implications of these rediscovered techniques extend far beyond historical curiosity. In an era increasingly concerned with sustainable materials and environmental impact, cold hardening processes offer a pathway to creating durable wood products without the toxic chemical treatments that contaminate soil and groundwater. The patience these methods require, weeks or months rather than hours, aligns poorly with industrial manufacturing timelines. But for artisan craftspeople, traditional builders, and those seeking genuinely sustainable material solutions, these techniques represent accessible alternatives requiring minimal infrastructure or specialized equipment. Contemporary applications could revolutionize everything from outdoor furniture to marine construction, creating wood products that outlast their owners without environmental compromise. The knowledge encoded in Iron Age practices reminds us that technological advancement isn't always linear. Sometimes our ancestors possessed solutions superior to our own, solutions we abandon not because they were inferior, but because they demanded the one resource modern civilization refuses to invest: time. As we continue experimenting with variations on these mineral-soaking techniques, adjusting solution concentrations, treatment durations, and wood species, we're not just recreating ancient methods, we're recovering a lost understanding of how to work with natural materials on their own terms rather than forcing them into industrial processes that ultimately weaken rather than strengthen. The Iron Age artisans who developed these cold hardening techniques understood something we're only beginning to relearn: that true durability comes from patience, observation, and working with natural chemistry rather than against it. Their wooden tools and structures have outlasted empires, and their methods offer us a roadmap toward genuinely sustainable material science, if we're willing to slow down and listen to what the archaeological record is teaching us. If this exploration of forgotten tactical knowledge resonated with you, hit that like button, share this video with fellow craftspeople and history enthusiasts, and subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more investigations into the practical wisdom our ancestors possessed and we desperately need to recover. Until next time, remember, the strongest materials aren't always forged in fire but sometimes in the patient darkness of cold earth and mineral-rich waters.